Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lea on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome into Vandy 24/7 Live. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, alongside Luke Wyatt. No Chris Lee today. He is actually out at practice. So I'm sure we'll be getting his thoughts on practice and also Robbie's thoughts as today's practice concludes. But we are a part of the Believe Podcast Network. Again, Luke Wyatt joining me today. I want to tell you first, before we talk any football, a little bit about our premier football sponsor, Joe Bulovas. Football season kicking off. Joe and I have been planning the Sunday night show that we'll be doing, recapping each week's game. So looking forward to that. But I want to tell you about Bulovas Wealth Management at Raymond James. If there's one thing we all share, it's that our lives are all unique. At Raymond James, they believe that's worth celebrating because financial planning isn't just about numbers and figures. It's about creating the life that you envision. So whether you're building a future or preparing for retirement, a Raymond James financial advisor can guide you each step of the way, all while following a plan that's uniquely yours. That's life well planned. To learn more, call financial advisor and former Vanderbilt kicker, first couple of years under Clark Lea, Joe Bulovas, with Bulovas Wealth Management of Raymond James. Their number, 615-645-6742. Raymond James and Associates Incorporated, member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC. Want to tell you also about FanDuel. Luke, we've got a line out on Charleston Southern and Vanderbilt. Commodores favored by 36.5. The over-under is set at 48.5. So we'll see ultimately what happens. But again, if you want to play some money on Vanderbilt, go ahead and do so over at FanDuel. Again, we've been hammering this one. Alabama. That is not till about midway through the season. But the Commodores, you can get them at plus 22.5. Also plus 1,000 on the money line, so some decent value there for Vanderbilt. We've talked about Diego Pavia. You can get him for the Heisman Trophy winner at plus 15,000. And again, 7+ regular season wins, pretty good value at plus 320 as well. You can also get 5+ regular season wins. That one's down to minus 210, so not as much value there. But FanDuel and the sportsbook starting to turn the tide a little bit on Vanderbilt and look positively at their season. So again, head on over to FanDuel, one of our new sponsors, to place some Vanderbilt bets. Also, the Wash House basketball season will be here before you know it as well. They're a presenting basketball sponsor. If you're dreading laundry day or if it's stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy, let the professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Look, we got the sponsors out of the way. I think we're just about ready for some football. What do you say?
Man, am I ready? I was just thinking the other day, I'm thinking, what is your favorite time of the year in sports? A lot of people say the NCAA tournament, that is a great weekend and all that. But to me, the anticipation of football, the way it ramps up, you got week 0 of high school ball, then you got the colleges right behind it. This is an exciting time of year for me. I absolutely love it. Can't wait to get started.
There's nothing like it. And I talked to somebody last week about the college game and where they're at with everything right now in NIL and the portal. And there's so much going on off the field. But no matter what happens off the field, you're still watching Saturday. You're still waking up Saturday morning, turning on game day, looking forward to your team that day. And really, Luke, there's been Vandy seasons. We go back to 2023. There was excitement before that season. You had a few players that you were excited to see. This year obviously is different. You've got a track record, last season that you're excited about, but fans are excited every year. I mean, you can you're lying if you're saying, you're not excited for your college team's football season. And every Saturday people still sit back and watch. I don't think that'll ever change.
No, and everybody's 0-0. If you're a if you're a Rice fan, you've got the same record as Ohio State right now. So everybody start deal the cards and see where we wind up.
Well, and we're going to do that today. We're going to kind of look at Vanderbilt's schedule a little bit and run through. Obviously we'll kind of, I guess, tier the schedule a little bit. Talk about the wins, maybe some games we agree or disagree on. This is an interesting exercise because look, Kentucky could be a very different looking team, November 22nd than they are now. Same thing with Auburn. Same thing. There could be a coach fired. There could be a coach on the hot seat. What does Tennessee look like? So a little later in the schedule, you get the tougher, but we're still going to take a look at the games this season and make a few picks, maybe a few bold picks in there. Also, mailbag questions. We do have plenty of mailbag questions, so we'll get to a lot of those and some interesting ones, especially with Auburn claiming some national titles. There's some good mailbag questions in there related to that. So we'll get to all of that and more. And we start, Luke, with the schedule. Obviously, August 30th, Charleston Southern, 10 days away from kickoff of that one. Very different way they kick off this season as opposed to last year. Clark has talked about how important that Virginia Tech game was to set the tone of the season. You can set the tone again this year with Charleston Southern, but and there's still excitement, right? But there was a buzz for that Virginia Tech game. Tech had some, dark horse playoff predictions, had some high hopes last year, and they come in and lose, obviously, to Vandy. Charleston Southern's not good. They went 1-11 last year. They may be the worst team in the country, one of the worst teams in the country, if not the worst. Luke, the very different way they're starting this season as opposed to last year.
It is, and we can win the game and still not be very happy. If we only win the game, say 24-17, then the sky will be falling. So, and this is something that we haven't done under Clark yet, and I know he's ready for it to happen. We need to go out and punch somebody in the mouth and beat them 41-0 or 56-10 or something like that. We haven't done that. We had the Hawaii game, which is an outlier, but besides that, we haven't really taken care of business the way we should. And this being the first game and everybody's healthy, and here we go, I really feel like we got to win and win handsomely, and hopefully Diego Pavia and some others are standing on the sideline in the second half with their pads off.
Yeah, we need to see some Blaze Berlowitz in this game and see Diego get in and out, get the starters in and out. And this is a luxury for Vandy this year, Luke. I think it works out. The schedule is tough, but I think there's some timing quirks in this schedule too that help Vanderbilt. And I'm going to touch on this next one. Charleston Southern is Charleston Southern. We know Vanderbilt's going to win that game and move on with confidence. Obviously, hopefully injury free. That's the biggest thing there. To stay in. You're not going to stay injury free, but to stay relatively healthy for the first part of this season and be healthy than you were last year, getting into the second part of the season, second stretch of the year. But this Virginia Tech game is interesting, and this is a timing quirk in the schedule, Luke. The week before, this is a tough start for Virginia Tech. They open against South Carolina on Sunday, August 31st. That's an afternoon game in Atlanta, so neutral site. They'll have a good crowd. That'll be a good atmosphere, actually, with Tech and South Carolina fans, the Beamer Bowl. So that'll be emotional. And, man, if they get that win, they got to come back home and play Vanderbilt, a team they lost to. So either way, it's going to be emotional, I think, for Virginia Tech. But that's timing-wise, that, again, works out for Vandy. Either way, though, Luke, that's not going to be easy going up to Lane Stadium. No,
I've actually been there. Now, this was during the time right after they had Bruce Smith and those guys. That's how long it's been. We went up 15-0, and they kicked 5 field goals in a game that was below. I think it was like below zero when we kicked off. It was a beautiful sunny day, but it was freezing kind of hollow there. But it's not an easy place to play then, and I'm sure it's even tougher now. The entry and all that. But again, as I've said this before, all that emotion only counts for the first few plays of the game, and then you're just playing football. It's you against the man across from you. So I don't really buy into all that. But I will say I'm excited about the fact that Virginia Tech and South Carolina are playing and that we'll get a chance to see both those opponents play against each other. I think that gives us a slight advantage in both those games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at South Carolina, week 3, you see both of them, like you said, and we got a question about this, and I don't want to, we do have some scheduled questions, the mailbag. We have a question in the mailbag in regards to how do you feel about these SEC opponents after what you've seen or heard from them in camp, in the Carolina camp. And Rasul Faison, a running back, still hasn't been cleared to play by the NCAA. And at this point, it's not looking good. If you're not cleared to play by now, that's not a good sign for you. But like you said, Luke, this Carolina, Vandy hasn't beaten them since 2007. Of course, going to be tough. But if you're going to beat Carolina, it doesn't get much better than this early in the season, right? We saw last year this, and I think this could be another theme this year. I'm not saying Pavia tears his hamstring again, or hopefully not, but you would assume he's banged up in some way at the end of this season or toward the end of this season. It's just natural. Now, is it as bad as last year? Hopefully not. But this is early in the season. Most years you're playing South Carolina late, you're beat up. That's how it was last year. You get them early, Luke. And again, like you said, you see them. You see them in that week 1 game against Virginia Tech, a team you just played the prior week. So again, timing probably works out well for Vandy.
It does. And I think this too, by them two having to play each other, it's not like we're playing Charleston Southern. Now you can approach it one way or the other. You can throw a bunch of trick plays and say, hey, we got to guard against that if you're Carolina and Tech. But those two guys, they got to come with their A game if they want to win that first game.
Mm-hmm.
So hide anything. They're going to be playing at the best they can play. And I think that's an advantage for Vanderbilt because we got Charleston Southern and we can approach it however we want to, I think.
And South Carolina lost 4 top 40 NFL draft picks. So that is a different looking South Carolina team. Well, still talented, and Beamer's a good coach. May not be the biggest Beamer guy, but he is a good coach and has dominated Vanderbilt just like a lot of other South Carolina coaches over the years. That'll be a big one. Week 3, week 4 and 5. Not gonna say cupcakes because you did lose to Georgia State last year, and they went 3-9 last year. That Georgia State team. I just looking back at their schedule and their record last year, that was not a good Georgia State team. And that was a team that you should not have lost to. So I would assume Vandy's going to be motivated for that one, just like Alabama is and Virginia Tech are for Vandy this year. And then Utah State, Bronco Mendenhall, you got Nick Howell on that staff. Luke, these should be, maybe not as bad or lopsided as Charleston Southern should be. But again, these shouldn't be close. We talked about it, a few episodes back. This shouldn't be a Ball State type result where you have to have Pavia in late in the fourth quarter, just to eke out that win. And then, same thing in the other obviously they lost to Georgia State. But yeah, these should be convincing wins also.
Well, I would say the Georgia State game would. Now the Utah State game, I'll push back a little bit because you know what comes after it. And our kids playing, get ready to, let's hope we're not looking ahead to Alabama and go through the motions. That's what got us bit by Georgia State last year. So hopefully, again, and you've already mentioned this, a lot of it has to do with not who you play, but when you play them and who they have next and who they had before you, that type of thing. And I'll look into that a lot when I'm going through the schedule. And I've looked at every team we're playing. I haven't bothered to look at teams that we don't play yet. But we just got to stay healthy, man. That's we keep going back to that, but that's 100% true. There's certain guys on this team that can't miss a lot of action.
Well, and then here comes the gauntlet per se. Everybody in the SEC has a gauntlet of their own. And this isn't, a 4 or 5 game straight gauntlet. I think Missouri is sort of sandwiched in between 3 pretty tough games here at Alabama, October the 4th. You come home to play 2 straight, LSU on October 18th, and then Missouri, October 25th, and then you're at Texas. So, Luke, Missouri's good. I think they're still talented. I don't think they, you go back to a couple of years, that Cody Schrader team, that was a really good team. Obviously, beat Ohio State. Last year, dropped off a little bit, still really talented. But Missouri is a team, I think, Vanderbilt, is the opposite of South Carolina. Vanderbilt does not match up historically in the last 5-6 years very well with South Carolina. They've had some close games, but athletically, I feel like Missouri is a better matchup, and I've felt that way under Clark Lea, really. I mean, I don't think they've been blown out by Missouri under Clark Lea, but that is sandwiched in between Alabama, LSU, and Texas. We know how tough Alabama's going to be. I mean, Robbie said this on the board, bloodthirsty Alabama fans with Vandy coming to town. That's not – you don't expect to see that every year, and you really haven't ever seen that. Texas, obviously in Austin, going to be tough. But, Luke, I'm talking differently about these games now after last year because it really is any given Saturday. I think there's going to be a big upset again this year. I don't know which game it is. I think out of, and at Tennessee, that could be the big upset. I don't think at Virginia Tech would be a big upset. I don't even know, at South Carolina, that would probably be a big upset this year just because you haven't beat them since 2007. I put LSU, Alabama, and Texas in that category. I don't think Missouri, Auburn, or Kentucky would be big upsets. But I do think there will be a big upset this year, and I think it could come. And it's going to be tough at Alabama. Who knows? It could come at home against LSU. It could come in Austin. I don't think there are any games Vanderbilt absolutely cannot win.
No, and let's go back a little bit to the way the schedule pans out. I think after those first 6, you get a break. You get a breather. You get to get a breath before you go to those next 4, and then you get another off week. So I think it's key that after the Alabama stuff's all behind us, one way or the other, win or lose, you've got 4 to look at. And of those 4, I will tell you this, and I'll probably hear from some Texas fans about this. I've been to Austin a few times because I've had friends that have been on the coaching staff down there. That's not a tough place to play. It really isn't. When you compare it to Alabama, Georgia, the Swamp, LSU.
Yeah, it's a wine and cheese crowd.
It kind of is. And I don't think that's going to be as big of a deal playing at Austin. And again, last year, even though we were banged up, we lost by 3 points to them. So it'll all depend on how Manning is at that point. If he's out on fire and all that type of stuff, it'll be a tough road to hoe. But we can beat them. We can beat anybody on our schedule. We really can. We really can.
I agree with that. And I think, these road games are interesting. At Virginia, somebody put this on their board, and I completely agreed with it. It was a few days back, and it was an individual post talking about these road environments this year for Vanderbilt. Last year, you were at Missouri. That was tough. Missouri's not known for having a very tough environment. Obviously, man, I'm forgetting about some of the other ones from last year, Luke. You had at Kentucky. At Kentucky was a good. That was a good. I was telling Robbie this the other day. At Kentucky was a good environment. Now in the press box, I know you've been there. It's closed in, so you can't really hear or feel the environment. But I thought that was a tough environment at Auburn, like you said. Maybe down a little bit just because Auburn was down, but still that's Jordan Hare's never an easy place to play at LSU as well. But what the poster had brought up was at Virginia Tech, you beat the Hokies last year, right? At South Carolina, and that's a night game at Lane Stadium. That's going to be rocking. At South Carolina, always. I mean, what you're getting into there, and you haven't beat them since 2007. At Alabama, you beat them last year. You know how hungry they're going to be. At Texas, like you just mentioned, their environment, good, not elite in the country. And then Neyland, it's always tough. How does Pavia and this offense handle those? Because I think the road environments will be tougher this year. And because there's more respect out there for Vanderbilt too, Luke.
Well, having a veteran quarterback like Diego, I think he thrives on that type of stuff. I think if you ask him, would you rather play in front of 25,000 Vandy fans versus Georgia State, or play at Texas in front of 80,000? He's going to choose the latter. I just think that's when his game rises up. Now, will everybody else rise up with him? I think that's where our defense has to be improved on these tough road games. I think we got to be at least 4 or 5 points better defensively, and I think we are. Don't get me wrong, especially depth-wise. If we do that, then we have a chance in just about every one of them.
Yeah, again, and I'll repeat this. I said the ceiling for this team is 8-4. I think I predicted on the board they go 7-5. But Luke, and this is a question too I wanted to ask you. Do you think last year, because Clark talks about this team is as close to 2-10 as they are 10-2. Do you think that's the case this year? Again?
Well, I do think it will be 4-quarter games every time we play in most games, except for 3 or 4 of them. And I say that because you look around the country, there's a lot of teams that fit into that category. That last year you could probably gone through their schedule and said, hey, if this play, if that play, you flip your records. I think that's true just about every year. Even in years when we've been 2-10, you look and you say, well, gosh, we lost 4 games by a touchdown. So, yeah, I do think I think Clark's right on with that. Now, this year, we have a chance to make more separation. And I know that's what Clark and the staff want to do, is get into the fourth quarter and protecting a lead instead of being even or having to come back and make great plays in the fourth quarter. I said it before, and I'll make this prediction right now. If we beat Virginia Tech and South Carolina, if we win those 2 games, we will be 9-3 and have a chance to go to the playoff.
I'm getting close to being with you there. And that's a big if.
Well, sure.
But look at what they did last year, again, early in the season.
Yep.
They've got to have that same level of focus coming into this season. And South Carolina, Luke, I would love to see, when's the last time you played South Carolina week 3? Like that because the SEC's flipping around these schedules. Like Tennessee plays Florida late, right before, they're playing Florida in Gainesville. It may be a little chilly. Well, probably not chilly, but it's not going to be, 1,000 degrees down there. So they've flipped around the schedules a little bit, and I think that's helped certain teams. Tech at South Carolina, that's going to be tough to win both, but I'm almost with you, Luke. And it's the same thing as last year. Like a lot of what we said last year, if this team beats Virginia Tech, then blank, then you can get to a bowl. But if you lose mentally, your confidence wise might be shot. You were almost there, but kind of the Vandy way of, you didn't get it done. You choked late, but they got it done. I think the same thing applies this year, but it's 2 games, like you said, Virginia Tech, South Carolina. And, look, there are some teams last year that were 9-3, like a South Carolina, that were right there on the edge. I think Vanderbilt can be one of those.
Yes,
I really do. And they're right there. They're right there behind teams like Tennessee, Missouri. They may even be better than Auburn, Luke. I mean, I'd venture to say they are. I know Auburn's got more offensive talent this year, but it's fun talking about a season that does have that potential, because you haven't been able to do that in a long time.
Yeah, I think the wild card with Auburn is Jackson Arnold. If he can produce the way he has shown it flashes, then they may be pretty good. Without that, they could go in the dumper really quick. I want to mention quickly why it's on my mind. There's 5 kids on this team. We talk about injuries and staying healthy. The 5 names I want to give you, and I'm sure you've got others maybe, or maybe you disagree. These 5 guys need to stay healthy for the majority of the season, and we can't lose them. Obviously, Pavia, Stowers, Martell Height, Fontenette, and Brock Taylor. Those 5 guys got to stay healthy. Bubble wrap.
Because, we talk about depth on the defensive line and, more depth really at a lot of positions. But those guys are the positions you don't have. Pavia, that, you got Berlowitz behind him. We'll see. I do think that's a wild card X factor type player for Vandy this year, especially if and when, Diego gets hurt or banged up. Behind Stowers, you do have Cole Spence, you do have Bryson Coleman, but those guys are pretty unproven as pass catchers, right? I mean, we've seen Cole Spence, he had that big touchdown against Georgia Tech and had some catches off some trick plays. A lot of his were designed, and he dropped a big one against Tennessee, if you remember that, Luke. And then Coleman, he hasn't played a ton, so. Behind Stowers, that's kind of supporting your point that, man, he's got to stay healthy. Struggled with a concussion last year. He got banged. He got hit a few times, with helmet to helmet stuff and just upper body stuff. So keeping him healthy. Martell Height, he's a kind of a hinge player this year, Luke, because not only is he going to be playing defense at corner, how much offense does he play? And I asked Clark this after the scrimmage. Is it concerning that he hasn't been able to work any on offense? You know, he's had a couple practices where he's been in there working with the offense. I'm sure this week, like today, he's probably back out there working with the offense. He had a red jersey, non-contact jersey on in the scrimmage. But, you know, what do you get from him? If you get good production from him offensively, again, that elevates his team to a level that who knows, you know, where they could go. And like you said with Fontenette, Brock Taylor, that's a good one. And we do have a question regarding Brock Taylor in the mailbag, and I want to go ahead and get to that, Luke, because we got a lot of good talking points there. Before the mailbag sponsor, though, our guest line with Luke Wyatt, good friend of the show, Wobble Bond Dickinson, sponsors the guest line. He thanks the student athletes at Vanderbilt University for their dedication, effort, and hard work. Guest line also brought to you by Yeaman Packaging Systems, leaders in end-of-line packaging automation. Also, Sutherland & Belk, family-owned injury law firm, sponsoring the chat room. We do have a couple of chat questions, so keep those rolling if you're watching live. And today's mailbag, which we're about to get to. If you or a loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor Russell a call at 615-846-6200 to learn about your rights and whether they can help. All right, let's kick it off with Cousin CJ, and this is the question I had a feeling we'd be getting today. What is your opinion on claiming old national championships? Would it add more legitimacy to the program if Vandy were to do it? Yeah, and I scoffed at this, Luke, because, look, Auburn obviously picked up several different, new national titles that their AD came out and said that, hey, we looked things over and we're going to claim these now. And, it's probably, look, you're going to put them on your scoreboard or in your stadium and people will talk about them. I think it's a tricky topic because I think it's a double-edged sword because, yeah, it could boost your prestige and your fan base can boast, but I think you run the risk, Luke, of being seen as revisionist or desperate, if your claims are shaky. Like, for Vandy, claiming old national titles, while they don't officially claim them, some sources do credit Vandy with national titles in 1906 and 1911, and then several others later, I think somewhere in the 1920s as well. Yeah, it could bolster your history, but Vanderbilt's not historically, they don't compare to an Alabama or a Notre Dame. And I don't think claiming a couple of or a few national titles would do much for that. And I know, programs like Pitt and Minnesota, they've claimed some old titles, with some strong historical backing. But I don't think Vandy is to the level historically of an Alabama, a Notre Dame, or even an Auburn, even though I do still think what Auburn did was kind of ridiculous. And look, fans and rivals, they like to compare and, now we've got more, blah, blah, blah. I think it matters more what you've done lately. I mean, I know we could talk all we want about the Vanderbilt claim to national titles in the early 1900s, but football's a little bit different now. So,
well, yeah, it was a totally different game actually, but if my great grandfather would say yes, of course, but
yeah.
Here's the way I look at it. We had a conversation when I was working at Vanderbilt. Every year, you put a wrap on your equipment truck, the 53-foot tractor trailer that you take on the road. And on that wrap, you put like past accomplishments, bowls, that type of thing. And there was this was brought up, I think during the Bobby Johnson era, do we put the 1904, 1906, whatever it was, the mythical national championship? And they said, well, no, don't do that. Then there was a thought, put a little bit of small letters on the tailgate. I said, let's just move forward. It doesn't, no one's around that remembers it. So once you get to the point where no one remembers it, that's left on this earth, it's kind of silly to put it up there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the NCAA's official records only go so far back, and the pre-1936 titles are shaky, and multiple teams claiming the same year. It gets a little ridiculous. So yeah, I'm with you on that. C Perk asks, what will us Vandy fans be most surprised by this season? And what about non-Vandy fans? Well, I think it's a good one too. I think Vandy fans will be surprised by the depth. We won't, because obviously, you've been down at practice some, Luke, and Chris, Robbie, myself have as well. The depth on the defensive line I look at, I think people will be pleasantly surprised by. And I know we've talked about it, so maybe there's some people that are now expecting that. But I think there's a lot of people that look at our reports and go, okay, we've seen this enough. We're going to wait till we get to Charleston Southern or wait till we get to Virginia Tech to really believe. And I don't blame anybody, for doing that. But, I've noticed this, the physical play as well on the defensive and offensive lines. And I think fans will notice that at least early in the season where, I think you'll see some plays in that Charleston Southern game where Vanderbilt physically mauls them, and as they should. But I mean, look, you didn't see a ton of that against a Ball State type team. You didn't see that really against Georgia State. Obviously, you lost the game, maybe on certain plays, but I think consistently, because you have that depth. Issa Wataha, I think he could be a guy that pleasantly surprises people. So, Luke, I would say the depth. I think MK Young is another guy. I know we've talked a lot about him, but I think people will be surprised by his versatility. He can catch out of the backfield. He can, he's a Swiss Army knife. He can make you miss in the backfield and pick up. Pavia and Beck always talk about how he's not getting brought down on the first touch. He is breaking that first tackle. That's his style. And Beck actually talked about in the media day a couple of days ago how they gave him the ball late in that Auburn game, one of their final drives, and because they had to milk the clock, and he was mauling. Go back and watch that. That was MK Young running and stepping on Auburn's throat. So I think, and they probably wanted him last year. They get him this year, Luke. He's matured. I think they'll be surprised by him. And here's where Brock Taylor comes in as a surprise too. He said his goal line is about 62 yards out this year. So I think, you could see a 61, 62-yard field goal this year, I think, from Brock Taylor, probably dead wind, you would hope, or maybe even a little bit of help from the wind. But I think that could surprise some people, especially some non-Vandy fans that go, wow, this guy hit a 60-yarder for the win or whatever.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's the depth that can surprise. And right out of the chute, we have a chance, hopefully, to do that. Because like I said, if we are up 4 touchdowns at the half and we can show that depth, even though it's against Charleston Southern, a lot of times – let's say we were ahead that much and then we had to put the starters back at times before.
Mm-hmm.
Put those depth guys, those 2s and 3s in and continue to add to the total and stack points. Then everybody's going to say, well, wow, in the past, Vanderbilt would have only won this game 28-7 and now they're up 41-7. So, yeah, I think that's it. It's the depth piece.
Here's a good one from Colbrad. Now that you've had some time to look into other SEC camps, do you feel better or worse about any of Vandy's in-conference opponents this year? Luke, I feel better about Vandy's chances against South Carolina now. I already felt, you don't go into very many years as a Vanderbilt fan feeling good about that game because you haven't beat them since 2007. But as this camp has gone on and as the longer Rasul Faison, their starting running back, isn't cleared to play by the NCAA, the better I feel. Now, they still have Lenora Sellers. You got Nick Harbor, a freak show at tight end, but they lost a lot defensively, and you play them week 3. So slowly but surely, I've started to feel a little bit better about Vandy's chances in Columbia. I already felt good about their chances against Auburn, Luke, and we've talked about this, but I feel even better now after Hugh Freeze. I don't know if you saw this. Hugh Freeze was asked if all 3 quarterbacks could play against Baylor, and he said yes. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Do you not have your quarterback situation figured out? And there was another clip, and I think this was taken out of proportion, but and this is a practice fall camp clip that if you're Hugh Freeze, you don't want out there. But he was ripping into Jackson Arnold after a misread or something. I just think Hugh Freeze at Auburn is similar to I don't think he's much different than Brian Harsin. I think you can compare him to maybe not as bad as Chad Morris at Arkansas. I just think he's in over his head in terms of the offense he's running. I think they could be better, but it depends on Jackson Arnold. But we just heard from Hugh Freeze at Baylor to start the season on a Friday night. You could see all three quarterbacks. Again, I felt good about that game, Luke, but I feel even better now after that.
Well, let's look at last year. I told you before the season, we're going to win 3 SEC games. Which 3 would you have picked? We beat Auburn, Kentucky, and Alabama. I don't think you would have picked Auburn and Alabama. Kentucky would have probably been one. So now you're looking at the same type of thing this year. Yeah, there's certain games you feel like we have a better chance in. But gosh, it's like you said before earlier, any given Saturday, we can play with every one of them. That's the good thing about Vanderbilt football to me, that in this short period of time, and the portal has helped us. I was wrong. I thought the portal might be the end of us. But because the university has bought in and we're supporting the portal the way we should financially and with NIL, I just feel like it's giving Vanderbilt a chance to build better depth, which we've done, and to always have a fourth quarter game. I can't tell you how many times when I was at Vanderbilt that when we went in at halftime, even though we were up, and we were up a bunch at halftime, because of our depth, we couldn't hang on and win football games. We get beat in the fourth quarter. That's always been the story of Vanderbilt for a long, long time, even with teams that were good. So, yeah, I just feel like that schedule, when you start pointing out who you're going to beat and who you're not going to beat, I don't think there's anybody on there that we can't lose to.
Yeah, I also feel better about Vandy's chances against Alabama, a little bit better. I'm not predicting them to beat Alabama, but Jam Miller, their starting running back, is out right now, and the estimated time for his recovery usually takes 6 to 8 weeks. He should be back in time for that Vandy game, Luke, but you never know. With injuries, it's like I talk about all the time with these older NFL quarterbacks, especially in camps right now. Yeah, he may be back to practice, and you may get quotes from the coach that he's feeling good, but you never know really truly how he's feeling. So again, we'll see what Alabama has there. We don't know what Ty Simpson is.
No.
I mean, we don't know. The same thing with Arch Manning at Texas. And there's some unproven quarterbacks. I do feel a little bit better there. Again, Jam Miller, still not great about that game, but we'll see if Jam is back. Also, the fact that Missouri still hasn't named a starter at quarterback makes me feel a little bit better about Vanderbilt's chances. I already felt, I go into most years, but if Missouri's on your schedule, there's something about them. I think Vanderbilt, typically plays well against them. They may not usually win that game, but they play well and they're in it. But I don't, Bo Pribula, we didn't see him a ton last year at Penn State. I know he came in and played okay. He's a runner. They do have a good running back at Ahmad Hardy. But Sam Horn, he's going to be playing baseball next year. So, who knows what happens there. And then Tennessee, I feel a little bit better about that game because, Luke, I don't know that they have any receivers. And that's tongue in cheek, right? But health-wise, they're banged up at receiver. So, and we've talked about that. I haven't changed a ton on Tennessee, though. Like, I've always thought that was a gettable game for Vandy.
Well, on the Tennessee point, their best receivers, they're tight end like us. Kinselman is their best receiver, I think. The Brazel kid's pretty good, but he can't stay healthy. So, one thing I want to say about Missouri, every time we play them, and this is kids. This is the way young men think. They are, and I'm not trying to be critical of Missouri being in the SEC, but in our kids' minds, they're not something that, because their fan base isn't rabid for football, and they fit more in our category. When we always played Kentucky or Missouri, we always felt we had a good chance. I don't know why that is. If you change their uniform and put a big A on it and say Alabama, then kids react different. And then one other point I want to make, the Alabama game, everybody's talking about, oh gosh, they're going to be excited. What if Alabama's 2-2 when we play them?
Buckle up.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah, because Alabama, that's a good point. At Florida State.
Yeah.
I know people are talking about Alabama this year, Luke, as if they're a shoo-in for the playoff. I mean, of course Feinbaum is, because that,
sure,
he's going to lose some audience if he doesn't. But, at Florida State, that's a better Florida State team. Gus Malzahn has beaten Alabama before. He's the OC there at Florida State. Castellanos, they bring him in, and then you host Wisconsin. But you're also at Georgia right before Vandy.
Yeah.
Again, so I don't. Nobody's invincible anymore on these schedules. And Pavia told this to Feinbaum's face. He said the field has been leveled with NIL. The playing field has been leveled, and that's an example of it.
And a place like Alabama, Billy, and basically the cutoff is at 2 or 3 losses to get into the playoff. If you lose 3 games, you still got a shot. If they're 2-2 if they play us, and they're already thinking, man, we're going to run the table, how excited are they going to be?
That's that Florida State game. All of a sudden, it's a big one for Vandy fans to be watching.
Big one.
All of a sudden, okay. What was the last part? I think we got through that question. Let's see here. VU Superior 7. Vanderbilt has 6 national championships and 14 conference championships and needs to post these on the stadium scoreboard. How do we get that done? Send an email to Candace, I guess, if you really want that done. But yeah, that's the case with I think that's a lot of it, displaying them and the thing about them though, 2004, they were probably the best team in the country. I don't, look, I was 5-6 years old, but I mean, they probably do have a case in 04, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Cadillac, that was a really good team. Also, second part of this question, are all of the large-scale Magoogan rebuild and football practice facility and baseball facility projects still going to happen? I wrote down, that's a Luke question. So I don't know if you have any new information there, Luke. I did see this on Twitter that they have submitted an application to start the facility upgrade at Hawkins Field. And this is public info, expansion and modernization of existing baseball stadium intended to provide improved team facilities, including new batting tunnels, a new weight room, as well as new fan experiences, including a new club food court and associated support spaces and patio space. The project includes a new 3-story right field building. So that is, and again, that's public information there. So I don't know if you have anything new though on the builds as a whole.
I will tell you this, and I'm not getting this from anybody personally that's connected to the baseball program. But if they don't go through with it, then get ready to do our salute and say goodbye to Tim Corbett in the next couple of years.
Is there a chance they don't go through with it?
I mean, there's always a chance if we have another COVID or something, but no, I think the intent is to get it done.
Right.
The frustrating thing for most Vanderbilt fans and for all of us, and you have to be honest, probably you too, is how long it takes to get some of these things done. I get why it takes some things longer than others because, again, I've got an engineer in my family and he explains it to me as best he can. But he did say that it's creeping along, that shouldn't take this long to get these things done.
Right. Third part, is AJ Newberry back to full strength? I know Robbie and Chris are actually at practice right now, so check out their practice report a little bit later today. They should be wrapping up soon to see if Newberry was out there. From what I've seen, he has been out there for the most part and should be back to full strength because we actually talked to him a couple of weeks ago and he did say he's feeling good and fully back. So yeah, but check out the practice report again to see if there's anything on Newberry. Fourth part of this question, can this be the best year in Vanderbilt sports history? I mean, in my lifetime, born in 99, I think, yeah, it does have a chance. For me, it's still 2013. Luke, you win the SEC championship. I guess technically 2012. You win the SEC championship in basketball for the first time since 1952. You win 9 games in football. You're in Omaha. Wait, hold on. 2012. Were you in Omaha?
No,
I guess not. Either way, you were close. I mean, from 2010 to 2021, Vandy was either in Omaha or on the doorstep. So it was a good season.
We're in Omaha.
With the weird part, the weird part, Luke. Yeah, the weird part. We'll be looking to see what this baseball team does, and chronologically, it is the last sport to happen. But you feel good about football to get back to a bowl game, right? Basketball, high expectations for Mark Byington, I think, moving forward. What do you get from baseball? I think in a weird way, they haven't been able to regional in 4 years. I think they are the question. what do you get from this baseball team? And yeah, I think it does have a chance to be one of the best.
Yeah, and the baseball question is only just how will we perform in the postseason. That's it. I think, we've been to the postseason now 19 straight, which is more than anybody in the country. And I think that continues to 20. It's just how will we react? You win the SEC championship in baseball at the tournament. You win the tournament. You're going in one of the hottest teams in the country, and you don't win. Unfortunately, and it's a tired old phrase, but that's baseball.
Yeah, and look, the pressure only amps up. That I think I'm not on Tim Corbin, but just on this program and the pressure cooker that it is. So yeah, I think a lot of it revolves around this baseball program. Fifth part, has Jay Cutler reached out to Pavia or the program during this exciting time, or does he still not feel he wants his kids to see football this way? A little bit of cynicism there. I'm not sure. I did see somebody sent me this from his Instagram, his son wearing a Vanderbilt shirt in an airport when they were traveling somewhere. That's something small. But Luke, if you're a Vanderbilt alum, how would you not have jumped on the bandwagon last year?
Again, and I know Jay very well. I don't stay in touch with Jay anymore much, but to me, Jay is one of these guys that's never going to love on you. Let me just say that. I don't care if we won the national championship in football.
Yeah.
Cigars, but that's probably about it. He's not going to put his face in there and throw, I'm Jay Cutler, now I'm back with you. Jay's with you, win or lose, if he loves you. He's one of these people that if he likes you, he's good to you. If you wrong Jay in his eyes, whether you maybe did it accidentally or whatever, then he's done with you. There's not a lot of second chances. So, I know Jay cares about Vanderbilt. He does. He may not outwardly support it anymore, and he may take shots at it sometimes because of things that he was mad about when he left Vanderbilt, which I understand, by the way. They were legitimate. But you have to look at what things are now. I had issues with things, but you got to look at how are things today. You can't look in the past. You can't live in the past.
Okay, Nashville Steam. Can you name one second or third string player that could work themselves up the depth chart, and why? That's a good question.
I'll take a stab at it first. I think the corner situation. I mean, I think we got 5 guys that you'd feel okay with when you look out on the field next Saturday and they're starting. Lack, Taylor, Height, Davis, Jones. I mean, there's corners everywhere.
Matthews, yeah.
Hoping they stay healthy and show me what they've shown me in camp, and I think there's definitely improvement there.
I mean, at running back, Newberry, I guess technically is a third string running back behind Alexander and Young. So, but we saw a little bit of what he could do. I think, obviously, if Alexander or Young gets hurt, Newberry's climbing up. So that's one to look out for. He could also line up out wide at times as well. For me, Luke, Caleb Barnett keeps popping up in practice. I don't know how much you see him this year, but he has popped up a lot in these scrimmages, honestly, in game action. And Richie Hoskins is quoted by saying he's one of the fastest players I've ever seen. So whether it's Caleb Barnett, Tristan Brown, Joseph McVeigh, or Bosky Barrett as well, I think there's going to be one of those guys that emerges. I think LeBron Hill is still a year away or 2, maybe. I think there's going to be a receiver, and it could be Barnett on a certain play where he comes in on an end around, a sweep, or beats somebody downfield. I think he's not big at all. He's really not big, but he's fast. So I think keep an eye on him as a guy. And then on the defensive line, do not forget about Jalen Stone. Jalen Stone has been really productive in camp so far. He's put on weight. Keep an eye on him as a guy that I don't know that he starts any games this year, but I think he could work himself up the depth chart as a guy that ends up playing a lot. Okay, from Gills Master, outside the injury bug, is there a room or position group that could be a liability this year? Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to have liabilities, right, Luke? I think the offensive line. I'm confident in that group. I think they're more talented than they were last year. But again, what do they look like the first part of this season, where they're still getting snap counts down? They're still getting these schemes down and what Kleinakis wants them to do within this offense. I'm not worried about them, but there's still a question mark. You haven't seen most of these guys play in Vanderbilt uniforms in a game yet. So not a liability. That's probably too far, but I do still think the offensive line could be a little bit of a question mark. The safety room as well, Luke. You lose Derrick Wright and CJ Taylor. Those are tough guys to come back from and replace. So I look at that room as a room, but it's hard to pick out liabilities, Luke, this year.
Well, I agree with you on the two position groups. My only disappointment so far, and I hope I'm wrong about this, is I thought we had maybe 9 or 10 offensive linemen we could depend on, but it's more like 7 or 8. And that concerns me from an injury standpoint. And then again at the secondary level and the safeties, because the backups will be youth. I think there's talent there, but it's unproven. So I agree with you on the two position groups.
Okay. Also, part of this question, I would like opinions on Cedric Alexander and some facts around his production when he's healthy versus injured. Besides blocking skills, is there anything that pumps you up about his game? Yeah, his catching ability. I mean, you saw it a couple times last year. I think it was the Ball State game where he had a wild catch on that sideline. A couple other times last year. In some scrimmages this year, he's come up with some big catches. Vandy posted one of them on Twitter. So yeah, his catching ability, that should fire you up as a Vandy fan, because, and I asked him about this at Media Day, Luke, has Pavia sort of brought this out of you? Because we didn't see a ton of downfield pass catching from Cedric Alexander. Pavia, I know, has brought it out of him, because he'll be rolling out, and there's Alexander 30, 40 yards downfield. And that's rare for a running back to do. So yeah, and I think blocking, you saw several times he's pummeling guys on those lead, those lead blocker runs for Pavia right behind him. So yeah, there's probably room to improve, but he's as good of a back within this offense as I think you can get, Luke. I think, yeah, he may not burst out a 50, 60-yard run for you, but man, he'll get those tough runs. He'll keep the chains moving. And in a weird way, Luke, you want an explosive back, but it's not the end of the world that he may not get you a quick drive and he'll extend the drive. So I think he's just fine within this offense.
The only thing said he doesn't have is 4.3 speed. Everything else he does, a coach loves. The way he blocks, the way he knows where to be in the offense, catches the football. And then you can say that for all three of those backs. A.J. Newberry caught 3 touchdowns last year. I mean, our backs, knock on wood, do a great job catching the football, which is great because that's your safety valves. Those are usually your check downs a lot of times. So they have to have good hands and make 5-6 yards when there's nothing there.
That's an interesting question about when he's healthy versus when he's hurt. He was banged up late in the season. And, there weren't as many games late in the season where he stood out. But again, he's not a stat patter type guy. At LSU, Pavia was everybody's banged up, and Tennessee as well. I thought he played well against Tennessee, so I may try to get some facts there, see like when Pavia was healthy versus hurt. I meant to do that before this episode. I may throw those into this thread. From Midges VU, what's our old friend Bob Shoop going to bring to the program this year? For some reason, I'm not remembering what he looked like or anything. I thought he was around 70 years old, but he's just 59. And Midges says, I know Luke thinks 59 is still really young. So, Luke, this is a good one. I think people forget about Bob. Obviously, he is getting a little bit up there. He's still only 59. And I do wonder if he's another defensive coordinator somewhere again, or if he wants to stay in Nashville and kind of just be an analyst like a Jerry Kill type. But I'll be interested to see. We know about the impact that Kill made last year. I'll be interested to see if after this season, you hear about Shoop making an impact there defensively.
I know Bob very well. Was there with him during Franklin. And what Bob will bring to this team is when at halftime, when we get in there and you're making adjustments, you'll have Coach Gregory and Coach Lea up at the grease board and Coach Shoup. And he's going to say, hey, guys, here's what I got from the press box. Boom, boom, boom. Let's do this now. Let's adjust to this now. He's a brilliant guy, very smart. He'll get I think our halftime adjustments on defense, watch for that. I think Bob Shoup's amazing at that.
I'm with you. And this is a more stress-free position. Like you said, he's watching the game. He's taking notes. He's probably he's got that monitor in front of him, and you would guess he's communicating with Gregory and Clark throughout the game. I don't even know, how does that work, Luke? How many guys, like obviously Clark, Clark's got the headset, him and Gregory communicating. How many other coaches have access to those headsets and can talk? Is that your role and you're not saying anything, you're just listening? Like, how does that work?
Well, what you do is you have guys, of course, Clark has got a toggle switch where he goes offense, defense, everything. So Clark's on everything. Guys like, for instance, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a coach I could throw out there. A lot of guys have listen only. In other words, they can't talk.
Yeah.
Boom is dead. All they're doing is charting and listening, and then they can make suggestions, when they're in the press box or if they're ones on the field. The guys, so you just have certain guys that can do everything, and then you have certain guys that can only listen.
Yeah, but like I said on Shoup, that's a not stress-free, but more when you're the coordinator, you're that guy, it's up to you. So he's just watching. I think he will be good for that role. Last question from Amber Jack Door. Actually, we do have a couple of chat questions as well. Will the new NIL be controlled by the McGugin Center? I don't know if he means McGugin Society.
Yeah.
In that question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he means. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
No, listen, as much as we think, okay, now everything's solved with the $21.5 million or whatever it is, it's not. It's still, you're going to have teams you're going to have collectives, you're going to have all kinds of different things. Every school's still going to go out there and do everything they can to get players in. And if you're thinking that it's not that way and you sit back and rest on your laurels and say, okay, we're going to work with the $21 million and that's it, then you'll fall behind.
Connor Hawkins on YouTube. How much do you guys see Diego and the starters playing week 1? First half. I mean, I think Diego, Diego's different than some of the other starters. But you've got depth. You've got depth, and defensively, if you're this staff, I think you'd love to see a little bit of Austin Howard in there, late in this game. He's been impressive in camp. A guy like a Jamison Curtis, Nikhil Jefferson and some of those guys and see what you get. But, yeah, first half, I think that's the hope, Luke.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you're right about protecting guys like Pavi and Stowers. And don't be surprised if some guys that are still a little bit dinged, they're not injured, but they're just, not 100% being held out. I do think that. Now, Clark will probably say, Luke, you're crazy. We got to be 100% and everybody ready to roll. But, you got to be smart about things too. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Trace on YouTube says last time to play South Carolina in week 3 was back in the COVID year, which I do remember that now. It was 2013 before that. Last win against South Carolina, 2007, was week 2. If you go back, remember. So
it was Mackenzie Adams was our quarterback, and DJ Moore was player of the game. He got an interception in the end zone, and that was at Columbia.
That's that's hard to believe now with how much Vandy has struggled, and it still haunts Clark. That when the grad assistant comes off the sideline and beats you in that 2-minute drill. So good chance for Vandy to bounce back this year. Last one here from Jordan. Hey Luke, what was your favorite year working at Vandy?
Favorite year? It's hard to say a favorite year. Because
you only had 40 of them, right?
It's hard to say. You have to go back and say your first year. I was so excited to be the head equipment manager at that time. I mean, as far as just working part-time, that's so long ago, I don't remember much of it. But yeah, 1990, I was in charge of everything, and that was really cool. That was a dream come true.
1990. Who's the quarterback?
Marcus Wilson and Mike Healy split time. It was Watson Brown's final year.
I've heard about that season.
Yeah.
Steve Sloan, offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We opened up at SMU. My first road game. We played them at their old Ownby Stadium, and you had to walk about a half a mile to get to the field. And you had two separate locker rooms. We had put offense in one and defense in the other. It was like PE locker rooms. It was terrible. Joke.
Doug Matthews, defensive coordinator there. I didn't realize that.
Steve Sloan.
All right. Coaches, good coaches staff, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And, but obviously the hope this season is that it does. And it all kicks off 10 days from now. Vandy and Charleston Southern. Speaking of kicking off, you got the Door Jam this Saturday. So if you're a parent listening, you got some kids, take them out there. It starts a little bit earlier this year. I think it's a 10:30 start, if I'm not mistaken. And that's on Vanderbilt's website. You go check that out. That'll be at the indoor facility. Typically is. So head over to that on Saturday, and last open practice tomorrow. So I'm hoping to get over to that, get some availability in there, some pressers, and some final takeaways. But 10 days away, Vandy and Charleston Southern. Luke, appreciate your time, and man, we're almost there.
Almost.
Want to tell you guys before we close it out, though, go subscribe, Vandy247.com. It's always been free. We plan for it to keep it that way. Give us a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. Subscribe to our channel. Like this video. Keep your comments and questions coming. And again, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 247 podcast.